So we will be joined by Glen MacPherson a little bit later on to talk about those weird hums, and we'll take your calls on them too as well. If you've had it happen where you are, you can give us a call, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. You can also join us in the chat room. John can see the stuff in the chat. Matt's working on getting everything else up and running, but for now, we'll just work with what we have. And then also later on in the show, we'll be joined by our friend Ross McHugh, who you've heard him on the show before. He's been on as a caller. We're going to have him come into the studio and hang out and talk about some of the stuff. Matt, I see it's going now. Matt's a genius. He figures it all out.
Yes. People are saying, here we go. It's on.
So you know what we're going to do, Matt? We're just going to pretend like we just started the show. So good evening, welcome to Spooky South Coast. No, people will catch up with what's going on in the video. So we will be joined by Glen MacPherson coming up in just a little while to talk about those mysterious hums that have been heard all over the world. And then later on in the show, we'll be joined by our friend Ross McHugh, who will share with us some of his experiences out in the world of the paranormal. And he's also a musician. And we'll probably talk to him a little bit about that stuff as well. And we'll take your calls throughout the course of the show, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420. I'd tell you to, you could email and all that stuff. But, well, email works. I get that on my phone. spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com. You can tweet us at SpookySC. I wouldn't use hashtags tonight because I won't be able to follow along.
This is true.
We're just going to make the most out of it, of what we have. And we'll power our way through it.
I'll tell you, it's weird sitting here with nobody to the left.
Right. Well, imagine when you're here and you're the only person here. That's when it's really. I've done some of those shows too.
Yeah, that's got to be
where it's just me and I'm talking to myself. I think people are listening, but I'm not sure. So in effect, I'm just talking to myself. And when I do those shows, I do them Art Bell style.
Like, oh, really?
I come in here and I turn off the TV and I turn off all the lights and I just sit here in the dark and I talk about weird things. So if I'm going to be alone, I'm going to make sure that I, creep myself out because I'm the only one listening. So one of the things that I wanted to do before we get into the talk with Glen MacPherson about the hums is, hang on, I'm going to roll back. There's been a very couple of interesting news stories that have been in the news this week, and I wanted to talk about these a little bit with the audience, and we can get your thoughts on them as well, John. So this one is from New York. Peggy Bruner, this comes from the New York Daily News. Peggy Bruner was preparing dinner when her phone began ringing Sunday night. She grabbed her cell and stopped cold the moment she saw the name that flashed on the screen. Desi, as in Desiree Gibbon, her 26-year-old niece, who was murdered in Jamaica 2 months ago. The slain Queens woman's cell phone was never recovered and her killing remains unsolved. I got goosebumps from my head to my toes, Brunner told the Daily News, but her hope for a breakthrough was dashed when she answered the call at precisely 5:26 p.m. and was met by silence on the other end. Brunner missed a second call from Gibbon's phone some 6 hours later at 11:43. When she tried to call back, Brunner got the message she hears anytime she dials her niece's number: "This phone is not working." This is a longer story than I realized. The mysterious calls add a fresh layer of intrigue to a case that has stumped local authorities and left Gibbons' family frustrated over the slow-moving investigation. So now they have been in contact with the authorities. The authorities say they had no idea where the cell phone was. She had a local phone with her that she was using, but when she left the hotel, she was only carrying her American cell phone. So this phone, which was inactive while she was there, she had one that would get signal. A lot of us do that when we travel. We get like a disposable phone, something that's just a single use kind of thing. And so she left with just her regular cell phone on her, which shouldn't be able to make calls from where it was. So they're getting these calls and they're thinking that it might be from whoever it was that took her,
yep,
trying to use the phone, or somebody found the phone and is like calling home, like just trying to find somebody that might know whose phone it is. So this was given to me by Phil Paleologos, the morning show host here at WBSM, and he wrote a note on it. He has a hunch that the call is actually coming from the spirit of Desiree Gibbon, the woman who was murdered. This wouldn't be the first time that I've heard of this.
I was just going to say that. I've heard that before. People have told me, when we would have the group and go into an investigation, we'd ask things that went on, and I've had different places say, or people say, well, one thing that happened, our home phone kept getting these phone calls, and the name would come up and it was from somebody that passed away in our family, and they shouldn't be calling us. So it's something I've heard before.
And I actually almost wrote a whole book about it because there was enough stories that I had heard of the same thing. Some with caller ID now, it makes the stories all the more interesting because now when it's coming from somebody's phone. And there's been stories where I've heard of, I already took that person's phone after they died and gave it to somebody else. Or we got rid of the phone, or the really creepy stories are, I know where that phone is. It's sitting in the drawer without a battery in it. But there's stories like that happen where people say there's no way that anybody else could have possibly have made that call and have it come from that person's caller ID. But even before that, there were stories of people who, before the days of cell phones and caller ID, where people would get a phone call, usually at weird hours, or maybe at a time when they were thinking about somebody who had passed away, the phone would ring, and they would pick up the phone, and that person's voice would be on the other end. So these spirits were able to somehow, some way, reach out over these telephone lines and be able to communicate with this person. I'm just going to turn down my volume here on my phone.
We're having an interesting night. Yeah,
it was down. I don't know why. Maybe it's the same thing we're talking about right here. But I'm trying to open this up so I can see the chat myself. So, these stories have been prevalent for a long, long time. D. Scott Rogo actually wrote a book about it, I think in the 70s or the early 80s, where he researched a bunch of these cases. So it's not anything that's unheard of. It's not anything that is new to paranormal researchers.
No.
It's just that as the technology has changed, the way that spirits are communicating via the telephone has changed.
Well, there is something funny, though, that can be added to this. And I've noticed it on mine, and I'm sure with your cell phone you might have it, or anybody in the chat. There's certain different programs that you can get for like caller IDs on your phone now. And the one that I have, if somebody calls me, or even if I call them and I do not have their number saved, it actually shows the name of the person that had it before. Like, for instance, the other day I called a restaurant to get an order on my way home. When I called, the number actually came up to a registered person instead of that business. And it showed their Facebook picture beside it. So maybe something like that, somebody's calling in from that number by accident, maybe misdialed, but it's coming up under somebody else.
Yeah, see, I got really weirded out when my phone was ringing one day and the caller ID said scam likely.
Yep.
I'm like, wow, my phone already can figure out when it's a scam call. That's pretty. Yep. And now I realize I get that call like 7-8 times a day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm glad it's filtering out. I hope it isn't somebody that really wants to reach me. Like it's scam likely, but it's actually like my grandmother.
Yeah, right.
My grandmother's dead, so that'd be a ghost call too. And another story that happened locally here as well that I want to share. And I was gonna take because we have this in the WBSM News. I was gonna take the edited version of this and read it, but there's so many weird details in the story that I just want to give it to you as is. And this comes from the Brockton Enterprise. It was written by Sarah Klein. East Bridgewater women charged in voodoo assault. Two East Bridgewater women tied up, burned, and disfigured a 5-year-old Randolph girl to rid her of a demon that was making her misbehave, according to East Bridgewater police. The women, who were facing multiple assault charges, also threatened to cut off the head of the girl's 8-year-old brother in what police described as Haitian voodoo rituals inside a home at 31 West Union Street in East Bridgewater. The ritual was done upon the mother's request, police said. Peggy Labossiere, 51, and her sister Rachel Hilaire, 40, were held without bail Monday after pleading not guilty during their arraignments in Brockton District Court on charges of mayhem, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, assault and battery on a child with injury, indecent assault and battery on a child under age 14, and threatening to commit a crime, that being murder. The women, who were arrested January 26th, appeared briefly again Thursday in court for a hearing to determine how dangerous they are. That hearing was continued. In mid-January, East Bridgewater police were called by Randolph police to perform a health and welfare check on a Randolph woman and her 2 young children, a 5-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. The two had been staying with Labossiere and Hilaire at their apartment in East Bridgewater, according to the police. Labossiere is a client of the mother, who is a hairstylist. Labossiere and Hilaire are identified as sisters in the police report. At the East Bridgewater residence, police found the mother and children. The girl had a large third-degree burn across her face, according to the police. The mother told police her daughter had woken up with the burn a few days earlier and that it was caused by a demon leaving the girl's body. The mother said she is of Haitian descent and believes in the religion of voodoo, which originated in Haiti in the 18th century and is centered around the worship of spirits. During a subsequent interview with children, the girl told police that she, her brother, and mother went to Labossiere's house in East Bridgewater for a sleepover, where they stayed for multiple days and slept on air mattresses. While there, the sisters tied down the girl on 2 occasions, securing her hands to a stick above her head and tying her feet together so she formed a cross. The victim stated that Labossiere would lean over her and kiss her all around her face like a snake and used a pointy object like a needle to cut her on the arm and collar area. Labossiere cut her so many times enough that she bled. Labossiere blew fire over the girl's face using a stick on fire as the mother and Hilaire held the girl down, the boy told police. While tied up, Labossiere put water and an unknown substance that looked like it came from a green lemon on the girl's eyes, which stung, the girl told police. The woman left her like that until her mother returned from work. The report did not specify how long she was tied up. In addition, Labossiere threatened to cut off the boy's head using a machete, as she stated in the report. At one point, Labossiere held a long stick to his throat, making it hard for the boy to breathe. She made the boy undress and rubbed his entire body with a plant-like substance and blew fire over him. He stated that she, Labossiere, told him he wanted to have sex with girls. Both siblings told police that they did not know why these things were done to them. East Bridgewater Police Deputy Chief Paul O'Brien said cases like this involving voodoo are rare. Once police found the children at the residence, they were taken to the hospital. Both smelled of smoke. Doctors found a piece of string tied around the girl's body, and a doctor said the burn on the girl's face would be a permanent disfigurement. The children were taken into custody by the Department of Children and Families. The mother was evaluated at a Brockton hospital and then sent to Pembroke Hospital for mental health treatment. At this time, there were no criminal charges being filed against the mother. So they did try to say that they denied threatening the boy with the knife. They denied rubbing the boy or putting a stick to his throat. They did say they performed cleansing baths on the children, which included putting frankincense and eucalyptus oils and sea salt on their bodies while burning myrrh. And so they say that it was the oils that caused the fire on the girl's body. But Labossiere further stated they performed this for friends and family members in the past, and that children are susceptible to the burning when an evil spirit leaves the body. So that's a pretty messed up story. That's why I wanted to read the details of it, because
it's just amazing but sick at the same time. Amazing that somebody would do that to kids, but sick and twisted at the same time that they would do something like that.
And it sounds like, these women, all 3 of them, the 2 sisters that conducted the ritual and the mother, it sounds like they all believe in the power of it, and that they thought that this girl was really just misbehaving because she had a demon inside of her.
We've talked about this before, personally, and once or twice on the air, but there's so much of that going around now, even in the paranormal field, that you get these people that first thing they run into is, oh, it's a demon, it's this or that inside there, we got to do an exorcism on them, to come to find out it is some type of mental illness, or it's maybe that they weren't taking the meds that they were supposed to be taking because they have bipolar or schizophrenia, something like that, and that's what's making them do this. It's not a demon per se. It's just crazy that people jump to that conclusion right away instead of actually using their head and doing a little bit of research to figure out maybe the obvious sides of things.
Well, one of the things that worries me is that when it comes to that level of belief, it's more powerful than anything. A true faith in something is probably going to be more powerful than any rationale that you try to tell the people. So these, the doctors that are now involved in this, the mothers under mental health observation, the police, the authorities, the judge, whoever, they can tell these folks involved all they want that what they did was wrong. But if they firmly believe that what they did was right, then it's going to stay that way, and they're not going to be able to make them see another side, because that power of belief becomes so powerful, it becomes all-encompassing.
Oh, you're absolutely right. The power of, like you said, the belief, but whatever they believe in, whether it be God or this or that, that is, and a perfect example is that TV show Waco, about the whole thing. He believes so strongly that he was the second coming of Jesus or the Messiah of Jesus, whatever you want to put it. he was able to convince everybody to believe him. So if your belief in faith is that strong, who knows? You can't change that person's thought on that.
And there's also the argument that says just because what they did was illegal doesn't mean that it was wrong. I mean,
And
some
that
people might
religion-
argue that there was a demon that was,
Yeah.
who are we to say that there wasn't a demon that was controlling?
And in that specific religion, or whatever you want to call it, they might believe that that's the proper way to take care of it and do things. So, who are we to say that that's not the right way? Things can change so crazy when it comes to dealing with people like that. And I know I've talked to you in the past about cases that we've dealt with, but we had one. We ended up having to do that and deal with a case when that came in, and where the family literally thought the guy was possessed by a demon, and he was hanging his baby out a second floor window. And we actually had a mutual friend of ours that was involved with the case come up, and she did a psychiatric evaluation of the guy, and come to find out he wasn't on his meds. And this whole other time, the first investigators that were there were telling him, "Oh no, it's a demon. We got to do an exorcism on you." And it's just crazy, once we were able to get the guy into the right treatment that he needed and got him checked out, he got to the hospital, got back on his meds, and things were working great for him from the last time we talked to him. On a case like that, we always like to check back with the family and see what's going on. And as last I know, he was doing good. He was taking his meds, and thank God we were able to get there before these other people actually tried doing the exorcism, which had no right, by the way, to do it. He was actually able to, take care of it and take care of himself and get away from the other people. So it worked out pretty well with that. But as for, doing hoodoo or voodoo or any of that, whatever they believe in, that's what they're going to do. They're going to believe in their faith and think that's what it is. So it's a very weird situation when you bring kids like that into it and get anybody involved.
Well, I don't know what's going on here. I'm trying to call the guest that's supposed to be joining us, and I don't have any. I have a phone, but I can't make long distance calls all of a sudden, and I don't know why that is, because the VIP line, which is what we call everybody on, is not working. It's not even coming into the system.
Really?
And I know they're putting in a new phone system here. We're getting these fancy new phones. I don't think they put a jack in here yet, but we're getting these fancy new computerized phone system that's supposed to tie in the entire building. So I don't know if they're taking down some of those lines and putting them in, but basically I'm going to try and see if he can call us, because this is. I'm just going to try and type as I'm talking here. But this is definitely not what I was expecting.
It makes for an interesting night with the phone lines not working, your internet not working on the other computer. It definitely makes for an interesting night to see what's going to happen.
So I sent him the email. We'll see if he can call us, and if he can, we'll have that discussion. If not, I know Ross is here.
Is he?
He went next door with his guest that's with him, so they will be here with us at some point. So we can have the show. Matt was asking me if we fired off a commercial, and I said no. So I hope something didn't go over there, because nothing should be firing off. This is where, if Stephanie was here, she'd be talking about Mercury retrograde. Yes. Whether it's Mercury retrograde or not, I don't know. But this is where she'd be bringing it up anyway.
Well, we did just have that new blue moon that's only happening 1 in a million years or something.
Right. I don't know what's going on tonight. But
yeah.
As far as I know, we're on the radio. Nobody's called up and said, hey, But then again, maybe the phones aren't working.
This is true too. But I mean, people, are in the chat room saying they hear us, so everything's good across that too.
It's entirely possible that they came in here and started doing work on the system. They're like, nobody's here on the weekends. After 1 o'clock on
we don't
Saturday, yeah, they totally forget that we're here. All right, the phone is ringing. So let's see if we can bring this caller in. Let me make sure I have both my pots up for this. All right. Let's see. Good evening. You're on Spooky South Coast. Is this Glenn?
It is. Hi, Tim.
Hello. Thank you so much for calling in. I'm sorry that we couldn't call you directly.
Oh, almost guaranteed we're going to have these technical issues, aren't we?
Oh, so is it your fault? Does this happen with when you do interviews?
Oh, well, I mean, after about 30 or 40 or 50 of these, I pretty much have experienced it all now.
Well, I'm pretty excited then that it's not anything I'm doing, so I won't get fired over this, which is always a possibility. But so I wanted to talk to you because I saw the story come across the other day that there's actually been numerous reports of these, and I'm sorry, I would give you a nice good introduction because that's all on the internet, which I can't seem to access right now. But
Right.
before we get into discussion, just give everybody a little bit of your background.
Sure. Well, my own personal, professional, and academic background is that for about 30 years I've been a high school teacher of physics and mathematics, calculus, psychology, biology, that sort of thing. I've trained mathematics teachers at University of British Columbia for about 16 years, and I still do contract work with them. The reason why we're talking and what has brought me to a bit more public limelight is my work with the World Hum Map and Database Project.
And this is...
And before we continue, we're getting a little bit of feedback back in my ear, but I'll see if I can turn my volume and control that. So please go ahead.
Sure, I'm going to try and pull some things down on my end as well. This is something that has been discussed for... We've been doing this show now. We just celebrated our 12th anniversary, and we've probably been hearing about this for at least half of those years here in this local area. That people will report hearing this hum, and it's not just it's not just something that is a vibration or something that you feel. It's something that has a physical impact on your body.
Well, I think we need to sort out quite a few things here in the time that we have. First of all, the worldwide hum is reasonably well established now through the documentation that I've been involved in, our mapping project and database project at www.thehum.info. And the hum was first reported in a widespread and reliable way out of England in roughly the mid to late 1960s, and then in the United States roughly in the mid to late 1980s, most famously in Taos, New Mexico, and Kokomo, Indiana, and Hueytown, Alabama, those sorts of places. But now with the data we have, we can see this is a worldwide phenomenon. And we'd like to separate it from some of the pseudoscientific and a bit more ridiculous sort of commentary that seems to surround mystery sounds in general and sky trumpets and Gabriel's horns and all those sorts of things.
But this is something that is, we're not talking about just like, I know that a lot of folks, as they get older, I work in radio, I tend to get this like ringing in my ears over time. And as people get older, they might get bouts of tinnitus and they might hear these little bits of ringing, but this isn't something like that. This is something that when you hear it, you know that it's happening.
Well, tinnitus is an important part of the discussion, and the reason why is because even though it's quite a different phenomenon than the world hum, tinnitus is self-reported. And one thing that I like to do in all these interviews, wherever I've gone, is that I like to insist at some point, and we can do this right now, is that I like to ask the radio host two questions, if you would indulge me.
Sure.
Number one, do you believe that do you believe that tinnitus is real?
I do.
Number two, why do you believe it's real?
I would have to say,
and the very fact that you paused,
right,
was that moment where you understood the implication, which is that tinnitus is self-reported. So the next logical point is, if we believe people who report a high-frequency ringing noise, why would we not believe people who report a low-frequency humming noise? And the answer is simply because fewer people experience it. The classic description, by the way, if your listeners aren't aware, is that the hum sounds just like a idling vehicle outside one's home. and it's louder at night than during the day, and it's louder indoors than outdoors. Those are the primary characteristics, but it has other features as well.
So that's that's been consistent with all the reports going all the way back to when it was first reported in the 60s?
Yeah, now, as it turns out, I'm just looking at New Bedford right now on the World Hum map, and it's kind of interesting. New Bedford has a population of around 95,000, if Wikipedia is correct, and Fall River is a little bit smaller at about 80-odd thousand.
Right.
What's really interesting is they're actually the World Hum is underreported in your particular location. Like the worldwide hum seems to follow population density. That's why the eastern seaboard of the U.S. tends to be so densely packed, and England has a spectacular number of hum reports. But in your area, it seems to be somewhat underreported, and that's sort of interesting. This is the first time I've looked at the map in this area. But yeah, the what we're hearing now and all the reports that I get, and I have over 17,000 entries on the database, they're all largely consistent about what these people are experiencing. And these people comprise a lot of very ordinary and everyday people, and some very serious people as well, and scientists and doctors and lawyers and all that sort of thing.
So with this map and the reporting that's been done here, how have these reports come in? Are these examples of the hum being reported that you found yourself? Is this people have been submitting these?
No. In the spring of 2012, when I first became aware of this noise, I embarked, because of my background in science and mathematics, I just assumed there was a logical source for it. And it took me on a really interesting journey. And those details are available elsewhere online if people are interested. But what it did ultimately is brought me to the internet and doing a search. And I discovered that this is a widely reported phenomenon, but unfortunately it's been associated with all kinds of ridiculous conspiracy and pseudoscience. And I thought that it was very much time for a serious and organized forum for discussing it, documenting it, mapping it, and ultimately leading toward an explanation for it.
See, because I work in the news department here during the week, and as part of that, we share our news stories in different local groups in the New Bedford and Fall River area, like different social media groups, Facebook groups, things like that. And I see a lot of people in there reporting these hums, reporting hearing these. So I think it's just a matter of they haven't known about your site to go and make those reports. And now that they will, I think you're going to see a little bit of an explosion in this area of reports coming in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the impact of this show has on reports from that area. But I would also stress that there are also a large number of perfectly everyday explanations for hums, and I'll use lowercase h for that. Everything from a fridge motor to marine traffic, to even float planes flying overhead, to electrical transformers. The point is, once we eliminate all of these obvious sources, we seem to be left with a generic worldwide phenomena, which is what I'm studying and what various people before me have also studied. Now, in the age of the internet and this type of radio call-in show, we can spread the awareness of this phenomena and to normalize it, and again, crucially, to separate it from a lot of the hoaxes and pranks and kind of pseudoscientific silliness that seems to permeate this topic for some reason.
So if just the average person is listening and they experience this hum, or they think they've experienced this hum, what is the process that they should go through themselves before they think that it's something worth reporting to your site?
Well, first, again, the classic description, a low-frequency humming or rumbling or droning, grinding sound. Louder at night than during the day, louder indoors than out, and also the sound can usually be effectively masked with background noise like a fan, like a bathroom fan or something like that. Some people find that if they let me give you an example of one diagnostic test that seems to separate out a lot of these hums. If the person just exhales very loudly or shakes their head for 2 or 3 seconds, and if they find that this stops the noise briefly, like for half a second, and then it quickly returns, this is almost certainly the world hum that we're then dealing with. If they go to the hum.info, they can see the link where they can view the world hum map and the database, and of course the link where they can enter their information. I have a new survey out now which is detailed and now goes after information that we should have been asking for the last 4 or 5 years. But with some external input from a couple of working scientists, I've got this survey form to the point where I think now we're gathering some really crucial data. But some really interesting results have already come out. And then, if you don't mind, I'll just quickly share one of them with you.
Sure.
We found that ambidextrous people, just to clarify, for the people who are sort of equally left and right-handed, they are greatly overrepresented amongst people who hear, like hum hearers, the people who hear the worldwide hum. About 55% of the hearers are male. The average and mean and median age is roughly 40 to 41 years of age. And we are still digging to try to separate out other interesting statistics, which might give us some clues. We've got 4 working theories now that we think explain what the hum might be, and we're just methodically working through those theories, and we're pretty sure that we're going to arrive at a solution before long.
And was that anything that you can share with us? What it may be?
Yeah. The Dr. David Deming in 2004 suggested that powerful VLF military transmitters, used primarily by the American Navy, the Russian Navy, and China. Those very low frequency radio transmitters were the source, because that would help explain the timing and a few other details that I'll spare the listener. So I actually built a special box, a special unit, that was designed to block this particular frequency of radio waves, and I got in the box. Now, this box is what caused Inside Edition and Coast to Coast AM and a few other the larger people to get interest. It's captured some of the public's imagination, but the part that they didn't report very broadly is that blocking unit failed. In other words, I'm now reasonably convinced that electromagnetic radiation is not the cause of this phenomenon, and I think now the most likely answer is the second one I'm turning to, which is that the hum is an internal medical condition similar to tinnitus, but it presents itself much differently. Now, we don't know why. The thing that makes that kind of unusual or odd is that the fact that why did it start in England? And why did it start when it did? And so we think maybe there could be a connection to either particular medications, prescription medications, certain environmental exposures. We're still speculating on that one, but the next thing I am going to turn to is that notion that it's an internally generated sound. Again, like tinnitus, but probably on some different auditory pathway.
So if that's the case, then are the reports that you've gotten, are you getting multiple reports in the same region from different people who are experiencing it at the same time?
Yeah, and what's crucial to note is that one of the questions I ask is as I ask people to actually match the tone, we have an online generator, and we get people to lower or raise the tone until it matches what they hear. And we'll find that numbers of individuals who live very close to each other are reporting that they are perceiving different frequencies. For anyone who has the audio background, I'll mention that I perceive the hum at a roughly 56.5 hertz. Now that hertz, that's an audio frequency, not an EM frequency. But wherever I travel in North America, after about 3 days, the hum returns at about the same frequency. And I just mentioned that air travel tends to disrupt the hum for anywhere from 3 to 4 days. That's something else that we've discovered.
Well, that's not uncommon. I mean, the first time I ever flew was only a few years ago, and it was cross country, and it took me a while, more than a day, to be able to kind of re-accentuate myself to ground pressure, to have my ears pop and to no longer feel like it had a physical toll on me, the descent coming down, and it took me a few days to adjust.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering, if maybe that's a similar type of physical impact that it takes that much time to readjust.
It's actually been studied. There's a German researcher by the name of Frosch, And he's discovered that air travel also disrupts what are known as autoacoustic emissions, thereby suggesting, or therefore suggesting, that the hum and autoacoustic emissions may involve some of the same structures. He and a few others have suggested that particular structures in the ear, known as the semicircular canals, in response to air pressure changes like flying or spending time at high altitude, may interfere or interact with the hum. So there are people who are turning their research sites into that portion of the auditory system, and with any luck, before too long, I can convince a serious university or private lab to take this over with proper equipment and proper funding so that I can get on with my life. I mean,
Right.
quite frankly.
Well, I mean, just looking at the sheer volume of reports that have come in, and as you mentioned, the depths of the area being along the eastern seaboard. I mean, you're talking about people who are operating at sea level or just slightly above. So it's but you also have people who are at other altitudes that are experiencing this. People who are in Europe who are at higher altitudes that are experiencing this. So, everybody's body that may be having these symptoms are at different physical positioning. So it's not like it's anything that would be based on, maybe the physical makeup of this person. If you put them at this altitude or put them at this altitude, like my ears will pop if I go so high. Somebody else might be able to have a little bit more
air pressure. Any human being, once they get to a particular altitude, eventually things will stabilize. It is that change in pressure which it's suspected is behind this. Now, until my project got up and running, there was an assumption that people who heard the hum only in particular regions and locations. Now, we know now that that's not the case. And the vast majority of people who travel report that they will hear the hum roughly in the same way no matter where they go. So this world hum is not caused by a standard local sound. It is caused by something else. And so, again, as you point out, the huge variety of geographical locations, altitudes, age, gender, it really distributes wherever we find people, we find people who hear the worldwide hum.
So we have a couple questions that are in the chat room, and
Sure.
One is they asked if the audio attacks in Cuba could be related or not to this hum.
I was interviewed for journal, fairly big Canadian journal on this topic, and the reason they called me was not so much the connection to the world hum, but because in all my work, I've managed to have a sort of a working vocabulary and knowledge of a lot of audio topics. I think it's clear that there was some sort of sonic weaponry being operated there, and possibly ultrasonic, using localization techniques. I don't think that there's any connection to the world hum, though. No.
And then we also have one other question that did anybody ever use electronic measuring devices to actually record the sounds of the hum, or can only the witnesses report it by ear hearing it?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and there are people who have claimed to. I am of the opinion that the worldwide hum has never been recorded. Now, there's probably the most well-known recording is from a Dr. Tom Moir, M-O-I-R, out of Auckland, New Zealand. Now, I've interacted with Dr. Moore, and however, all of my inquiries to him have all gone to dead ends. And he also told me that the very phrase humdrum comes out of the Industrial Revolution of England, which it does not. And so I've written off those claims. Numbers of people, probably out of all the hundreds of emails I receive every month, usually 5 or 6 people send me recordings. And unfortunately, there's not a lot I can do with those recordings. I can do some analysis, and in some cases pick out frauds or pranks. And in some cases I can pick out simple mains hums. Like any hum that comes in at 120 hertz audio or 60 hertz audio is probably based off the electric grid. But there have been people who have attempted, including myself, by the way, using high sensitivity infrasound microphones, have actually had no luck in recording what we hear.
Well, I'm going to throw a question at you that has, and this might be a loaded question because we only have a few moments left, but this will involve some pseudoscience to it.
Sure.
And we work in the paranormal realm, and we work in ghost research, and in part of that is we record what's called electronic voice phenomena, which are disembodied voices that imprint themselves on their recordings. Some people think that they're the voice of ghosts. I don't think so, but I think that there's certainly something that is imprinting these words onto these recordings. And one of the ideas behind it is that it's something that we're projecting out ourselves, and we're not consciously aware of the fact that we're making these sounds and that we're just kind of putting them out there in the ether. Is it possible that this hum is something that's coming from us and actually going out and becoming an auditory phenomena? So it's not something that is internal, but something that we're somehow putting out and changing the vibrations around us, therefore changing the sound waves around us. Like a physical thing that we're doing.
No.
Okay. Because I think
now I mean, let's be fair. I, for example, when it comes to ghost research or other types of psychic, or if we even broaden that to talk about psychic phenomena in general, that and telekinesis and thought projection, remote viewing, I'm not claiming that these things point blank do not exist. What I'm saying is I've seen absolutely no evidence to suggest that they do. And with regard to the latter category, James Randi, as many people know, has a $1 million check waiting for anybody to demonstrate convincingly any of these phenomena.
We can have a James Randi argument another time because he's put so many restrictions and it doesn't kind of work the way that he wants it to work. But anyway, I mean, that's something we can talk about another time. I'm obsessed with the idea that people that are experiencing this ghostly phenomena, it's actually something that they're doing, that they're just, the same idea that when a Ouija board operates, that it's somebody using their, motor skills without realizing that they are. I think that this is part of what we experience with ghost research, but we can say that for another time. I do want to give you a chance though to let people know, because this is not a cheap endeavor to be able to compile all this information and keep all this information up, and it's something that you've been doing just out of your own research and out of your own pocket. There is a way for people to make a donation if they want to help with this research.
I don't openly solicit on these shows, but I'll say that.
Well, I can. I'm openly soliciting for you.
Okay, sure. That the donations will barely cover the cost of web hosting and that kind of thing. But if they go to the hum.info and if they click on who is behind this project, or if they go to the blog and click on who is behind this project, there are links there for people who wish to donate.
But the most important thing is for people to go to the site, to go to the hum.info and share their reports and share their experiences.
It's just one hum here at a time, and we will eventually wear down the walls of incredulity and apathy.
And I think
and find a solution.
I think that spreading the word out here in this listenership area will help, because, like I said, I've seen so many of these reports come across, and now people know where they can go to report them and have them all collected. So, Doctor, thank you for what you're doing, and certainly we'll be in touch in the future, and we can expand this into a much longer conversation and really get into some of the nuts and bolts. My usual co-host, one of them I will let you know in fairness, is a psychic medium, so we might have some friction there. But also, one of my co-hosts is a scientist who has looked into this on his own in the past. So I'd be interested in having a good back and forth with you guys as well.
I would enjoy that very much, and thanks for having me on, Tim.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, and we will be in touch.
Take care, bye.
Take care. That is Dr. Glen MacPherson. Again, the website is thehum.info. If you want to report. Absolutely report any experiences that you've had. Put them up there on the site. We're going to be taking a break in just a minute. When we come back on the other side, we will have Ross McHugh joining us in studio. I think John's got to take off, but we'll make Ross sit in that seat, and he can keep an eye on the chat room too. He's usually in the chat room anyway.
Exactly.
He knows how to do it.
Yeah.
So we'll get into all that as well. And when we come back on the other side too, I want to let everybody know about something that's coming up, a fundraising event. The details are still being worked out. But we will let you know how you can help a very special member of the paranormal community who is having some health issues. You might know about this already, but we're going to give you some more info. And when we come back on the other side, we'll talk about how you can help out with some medical costs associated with this beloved person, beloved creature, I guess. We'll be back with more Spooky South Coast in a minute. Tim Weisberg here.